Welcome to Papa's Workshop. Today I want to just do a real short video on a quick tip on how to make a perfect dado every single time in the wood like this that you can do with a jig that is so simple that I'm not sure I can even call it a jig. It's literally just a couple of pieces of scrap wood put together and it makes perfect dados every time. So let me show you how I did that today. So let's get started. To make this dado jig, I just grabbed 2 pieces of scrap wood and also grabbed a little thin piece of the 1/2 inch MDF. And I'm just going to give it the rough length here. And this is a little bit different length, doesn't really matter. But I'm going to go ahead and cut this one. Now I went ahead and cut the 2 strips of length. This jig can be any length that you need depending on the dado that you need to cut. This is just an experiment today. Now to be able to do this, I'm using just a small trim router with a 1/2 inch router bit to be able to do the dados. I'm just going to go ahead and slip that in and tighten it down. I'm going to set my adjustment as far as the height. I only want this to cut down about 1/4 inch. Typically the dados are cut anywhere on a 3/4 inch piece of plywood, anywhere from 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. So that really depends on your project and how you want to do it. Now this is going to be running on this side and also on this side because this is an equal distance from the center of the bit out to the edge as it is from here to there. That's important. Some routers are round and it's consistent all the way. This one is not. So that's important to note when you're setting up this jig to make sure you're running on the sides that are even. And I can measure this. And see, that's about 1 3/4, 1 3/4. But if I measure on this side, it's 1 3/8. And if I measure on this side, and this side's 1 3/4 also. So I have 3 sides that are consistent, 1 side that's not, that's narrower. So you have to be aware of that when you're setting up this simple jig, because the router is going to run along this side of the plate. Now I know that this is the 1 3/4 from the center out, so I need to be able to set this little scrap piece of wood enough where when I run the router along here, it will cut a nice straight edge exactly where the router is cutting. So I'm going to set this up at about 2 inches back from this edge, and that'll give enough room for that router to cut this edge nice and straight. And you can actually see this isn't even a straight piece of wood, and that's alright for this application because the router is going to straighten it out in just a moment. So I'm going to measure back about 2 inches, and this doesn't have to even be exact. If you're a little bit off, that's fine, just as long as you're back far enough beyond this distance on this router, because the router is going to cut it clean and straight. Okay, I have my measurements now. I'm just going to go ahead and line this up, and I'm going to shoot this in place. I'll set this one aside. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Now this is a 1 inch nail that I'm using, and this material is also with the 2 pieces 1 inch. So I did shoot it in at an angle, so I did not want it coming out the bottom. Now I'm going to go ahead and clamp this down and run the router along this edge to get it nice and straight. I set the router up to be able to cut the full depth of this 1/2 inch MDF material. Now I'm using the guideline that I had nailed on and to be able to cut this. And this actually cuts a very straight, nice line to be able to use this jig effectively, this is the key to the whole jig. Making sure that this is cut smooth and straight, following this little guide block that I had put in place. Now I did run this down 1 second time just to make sure that everything was clean cut and straight. Then after that, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the clamps and let you see up close how this looks. That is perfectly straight and follows the little guide block that I put in perfectly. So with both halves cut like this now, I'm ready to show you how this jig is going to work. Now I have a piece of 3/4 inch plywood and I want to put a dado in here using this jig. Now this is a real narrow piece, but this jig can accommodate anything up to the length of the jig itself. If you need to make dados longer, all you need to do is just get a bigger scrap piece of wood and make this longer. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just decide where I want the dado, and I'm going to draw a line. And I'm going to put the dado on this side. So from there, I'm just going to grab the first half of the jig, and I'm going to put the jig right on that line, exactly where it needs to be. And then I'm going to clamp it down. I have that in position. I put that right here. I'll slide that right up next to it. And I'm just going to hold it down with a couple of little brad nails. And slip that out. With the depth set, I can now go ahead and run it. And I'm going to run this along the side here, and then I'll catch the other side along this side of the fence. As you can see, this is very, very simple jig. Now, can you make it nicer and fancier? Sure you can. You can add on all types of different blocks of wood, if you will, to be able to make it more effective. But this is very, very simple, and it does work effectively. I want to get this up in the camera so you can see it. And there we go. That's a perfect dado. Now you can go any depth that you want down here. I kept it shallow, but you can make it any depth that you want. Typically it would go anywhere all the way up to 3/8 of an inch down, which would be halfway through the plywood. I just made this one shallow so that I could show you how it works. And it's nice and snug. You know, there's many different ways to make dados. You can do it on a table saw, and you can use a router, and you can use all kind of fancy jigs to be able to do it. But this is a super easy way to be able to take some scrap wood and make a jig. And you can do it very quickly, do your dados, and continue on with your projects. Now, yes, you can make this jig a lot fancier, but there's no real need to. Keep it simple. It's always been my motto. You've seen that in my tapering jig that I did, and I'll put a link up top on the video for that. And you've just recently have seen the supersized version of my tapering jig. So, keep it simple. That's my philosophy, and I hope you enjoyed this video today. And if you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below, and don't forget, hit the little bell notification so that you'll be notified on all the different videos that I upload. And also, check out the videos over here to be able to stay up to date on the happenings in my shop. So until next time, have a great day. Please be safe with this coronavirus. Let's stay healthy and get through this. Bye-bye.